On August 16, 1977, Memphis awoke under a scorching summer sun, never suspecting that the day would mark the end of an era. Behind the white gates of Graceland, Elvis Presley, idol, rebel, and cultural phenomenon, was nearing his final moments. To the world, he was still the dazzling performer in sequin jumpsuits, the king who could ignite a crowd with a single glance. But privately, he was a man worn down by illness, exhaustion, and years of hidden suffering. That morning began quietly inside the mansion. Elvis had spent much of the night with Ginger Alden, his young fiancée. They read together, talked, and tried to find a fragile sense of peace in the privacy of his upstairs suite. Elvis had long been a creature of the night, living by a rhythm all his own, awake when others slept, retreating into his own world when daylight came. But on that morning, restlessness seemed to grip him. His body was frail, and though concert dates loomed, he wasn't ready to perform. His voice was still powerful, but it was carried on a body breaking under the weight of pain, medication, and fatigue. Sometime after 9 o'clock, Elvis rose from bed and told Ginger he was going to the bathroom. It was routine. He often spent long stretches there, battling the effects of chronic illness that few outside his closest circle knew about. Ginger remained behind, expecting him to return as always. Minutes passed. Then half an hour. The silence pressed in like the heavy Memphis heat. At first, she reassured herself, but unease crept closer with every second. Finally, she opened the door. What she saw froze her in place. Elvis lay face down on the bathroom floor, his pajamas twisted, his body collapsed as if caught in mid-motion. His skin was pale, his chest still. Her cries echoed through the halls as she rushed to him, calling his name, shaking him, begging for a response that never came. Panic overtook her, and others in the house rushed in. Doctors were summoned. Efforts were made to revive him, but his body remained limp. Paramedics arrived, lifting the lifeless frame of the king onto a stretcher and rushing him through Graceland's gates. Fans gathered outside thought they might see their idol. Instead, they witnessed the final journey of Elvis Presley as the ambulance sped down Elvis Presley Boulevard to Baptist Memorial Hospital. Inside the emergency room, the fight to save him continued. Doctors tried everything: compressions, injections, electric shocks, but nothing could bring him back. By 3:30 p.m., the inevitable was declared. Elvis Aaron Presley, just 42 years old, was gone. The news spread with the speed of lightning. Radio stations interrupted their broadcasts. Television anchors struggled through tearful announcements. Outside Graceland, fans wept openly, their grief spilling into the streets of Memphis. Across the globe, millions sat stunned in disbelief. The man who had transformed music and culture was no more. But even as the world mourned, questions formed. How could someone so young, so vital in the public eye, collapse so suddenly? Whispers of an overdose began almost immediately. At the hospital, doctors and coroners prepared for an autopsy unlike any in American history. The body was quietly transferred to the morgue while reporters gathered in a frenzy outside. Every cut of the scalpel, every finding would be scrutinized and debated endlessly. What they found painted a tragic picture. Elvis's heart was enlarged, nearly twice the size of a normal man's, its arteries hardened and clogged. His body bore the marks of long-term disease, not just the wear of fame but the weight of chronic illness. And in his system were multiple prescription drugs, painkillers, sedatives, tranquilizers. Some levels were therapeutic, others troubling. To his doctors, none of this was surprising. Elvis had been battling serious health issues for years, and medication was the only thing keeping him functional. But when fragments of the toxicology report leaked, the press seized on the story: Elvis Presley, felled by pills. For grieving fans, the explanation was almost unbearable. The king, reduced to a cautionary tale of excess. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, quickly ordered the full autopsy sealed for 50 years. Only a brief summary was released, citing cardiac arrhythmia as the cause of death. The secrecy fueled rumors. What was being hidden? Was it truly a heart attack, or something more scandalous? Conspiracies took root, and the mystery deepened. In the years that followed, Elvis's personal physician, Dr. George "Nick" Nichopoulos, became the center of controversy. To some, he was the villain who supplied endless prescriptions to a superstar. To others, he was a doctor doing everything possible to manage a man ravaged by chronic illness. Dr. Nick eventually spoke publicly, painting a picture not of reckless indulgence but of a patient suffering from multiple debilitating conditions. He revealed that Elvis's colon was massively enlarged, a condition known as megacolon, which left him in constant pain, struggling with severe constipation and bloating. This alone explained the long, lonely hours in the bathroom. Layered on top of this were diabetes, glaucoma, high blood pressure, and an enlarged heart. Elvis was, in Dr. Nick's words, held together with medicine. The mountain of prescriptions was not for pleasure, he argued, but for survival. Without them, Elvis could not perform, could not function. Yet the sheer number of medications blurred the line between treatment and dependency. His tolerance grew, dosages climbed, and interactions between drugs made his already fragile health more precarious. In 1980, Dr. Nick was indicted for overprescribing substances, accused of fueling Elvis's decline. The trial became a media spectacle, but in court, testimony about Elvis's illnesses persuaded the jury. Dr. Nick was acquitted, though his reputation never fully recovered. What emerged over time was a clearer picture. Elvis Presley's death was not the result of a single reckless overdose, nor the product of one failing organ. It was the collapse of a body battling multiple chronic conditions, compounded by years of prescription use. His heart was weakened, his arteries clogged, his digestive system failing, his weight fluctuating, his energy drained. The medications that sustained him also placed him on a knife's edge. Alternative theories added more layers to the myth. Some said he died straining in the bathroom, the effort triggering a fatal heart attack. Others suggested genetic illness, such as alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, might have explained his recurring health issues. And then came the most fantastical claim of all, that Elvis never died at all, that he faked his death to escape the crushing weight of fame. Rumors of sightings persisted for decades, more a reflection of longing than fact. In truth, the man who once embodied untouchable vitality had been fighting for years just to keep moving, just to keep being Elvis. Every glittering performance masked the toll it took on his failing body. He was not undone by a single night of excess, but by a relentless storm of illness, pain, and the crushing burden of being the king of rock and roll. On that sweltering August day in Memphis, the myth ended, and the man remained, a man who had given everything to his audience until there was nothing left. The world lost its brightest star, but behind the legend was a fragile human being whose suffering had long been hidden. His final hour was not lived in front of thousands, but in silence, alone. Yet in death, as in life, Elvis Presley became more than a man. He became a story, a mystery, and a legacy that refuses to fade.